Okay, very good afternoon to one and all. At the outset, I would like to thank our head of the department, Dr. Dalvi, for giving me an opportunity to speak to you on this session about applications of data science to power systems. I'm also thankful to the organizer, Dr. Ruikar, for arranging this. Now, let me start the presentation. So, there are few buzzwords which have been going on in past few years, and most of them are related to the artificial intelligence, machine learning, and big data, etc. One of the terminologies which can encompass most of these things is the data science. Now, and data science is now omnipresent. It is like being applied to almost all the different domains of engineering, technology, art, science, etc. So I thought that to utilize this particular opportunity to interact with you, my colleagues and students and people from industry regarding this particular topic. And specifically in today's topic, I'll be covering the introduction to data science, what are the different buzzwords, and a few case studies about how we can apply data science to solving some power system problems. Before continuing with this, just brief introduction about me, and I have kept it relevant to this today's presentation. So I've done my PhD in electrical engineering from Nagpur University, and almost after that, you can say I've completed. I am about to complete the postgraduate diploma in data science from International Institute of Information Technology. I've also done a certification in data science for engineers from IIT Madras under the NPTEL, and also I've completed a course in machine learning by Mr. Andrew Ng on Coursera. I have overall experience of 19 years of teaching and learning, and I'm still learning. Okay, so moving ahead, what is data science? So data science is a field of study which encompasses various areas of studies. So we have computer science and IT. We have computer science and IT. We have mathematics and statistics, and the domain knowledge or business knowledge, which we generally have. So if it is lying at the intersection of all these, this particular thing is nothing but data. So, or in simple terms, if I want to talk about data science is something which relates to all the processes, methods by which can do something with the data and bring out some meaningful outcomes. So for example, if you are an electrical engineer, you have the domain knowledge of power systems, control systems, electrical machines, and you have some knowledge about computer science. You can combine these two knowledge and you can write a software. So that is nothing but the software development. If you have the domain knowledge of electrical engineering, how a transformer works, and you also know mathematics and statistics, then you can combine them and prepare a new model for a transformer or any motor. This is nothing but the traditional research. Also, if you have good knowledge of computer science, mathematics and statistics, you can write the algorithms related to machine learning. At the intersection of all these lies this data science, right? So in layman's terms, once again, I would like to emphasize the data science is nothing but the study of the data, how to process the data, how to gather the data, then process the data and use it for our benefit. Okay, now with this background in mind, let's go ahead. So mostly the data science is being used for analytics purpose. Okay, and analytics is something which is a big industry in today's world, cutting across the domain, whether it is engineering domain or banking or healthcare sector, anything and anywhere, data is ever pervasive. So we can define the analytics in various parts. Like first is the descriptive analytics. Okay, so descriptive analytics is nothing but what we kept on doing using Excel, Microsoft Excel. Okay, so Simple. Okay, but there's a lot of human input, and then we take the decision, and then we take the action. If I talk about the diagnostic, so this is about descriptive, is about what happened, right? Then we can talk about the diagnostic. So diagnostic analytics relates to why it happened. Why did it happen? So this is a slightly more in-depth analysis than the descriptive analytics. This requires a little bit lesser human input to arrive at a decision and action. Then the next step is predictive analytics. Predictive analytics is if you have a lot of data and if you have used some of the tools, you can predict what will happen, what is likely to happen. Okay, so it is slightly more deeper than the diagnostic analysis. Then you have the today's advanced algorithms which can do the prescriptive analysis. What should be done? Okay, so it is not only restricting yourself to why happened, what happened, why it happened, and what will happen, but what you should do. So this is almost like the human interference is minimum, and you do the decision automation and ultimately the action, right? So the analytics has gone from descriptive to prescriptive in these stages, and all these things are now available because of the tools of the data science and the hardware as well as the software. We'll be coming to that as we go through this, some of the examples. If I talk about some of the buzzwords that are there in today's world, then we see, you must have heard about these terms, maybe in your classroom, or maybe while going through the Facebook, some advertisements must be coming that take a course in machine learning. Okay, what is supervised machine learning, unsupervised, deep learning, big data, then regressions, random forest, deep this boosting algorithms, etc. These are some of the buzzwords in the data science domain, and these are not only the buzzwords, these are some things which are really useful for arriving at a very important decision. Okay, so let's start with the first, this term, big data. Now, why I'm starting with the big data, because you have to first understand that why this entire data science domain has taken such a big shape in last few years. Data was always there. Whenever it was always there, even before the inception of computers. It was handwritten, but the data was there. We used to have Excel sheets since last so many years. But why data science has taken such a big role? Because of the big data. And what is this big data? We'll try to understand this big data, and then we'll move forward with this. So big data analytics can be understood by 4 V's. What are these 4 V's? These 4 V's are the volume, variety, velocity, and value or veracity. Now, out of this, the last one, the value or veracity, refers to the quality of data or the usefulness of the data. This has to be decided by the domain user. So domain user, as an electrical engineer, suppose you have connected so many sensors, and in a particular machine, you have to decide which of these sensors data is really useful to you for all the time. So that will decide the value or the veracity of the data. Regarding the volume, now let's start with the volume. Now, volume means the amount of the sheer size of the data, or the amount of the data that you have to handle in today's world is exorbitant. India has roughly 25 crore traditional meters installed across India, right? And the government of India has a plan to replace all these 25 crore traditional meters with smart meters, out of which 11 lakh have been already replaced, right? Once you have a smart meter or an automatic metering infrastructure, these smart meters are not only measuring the energy, but they are also storing the information and transferring this information on a continuous basis to your central server or to your computer, right? So you imagine if there are 25 crore meters and these meters are transferring data to a central server, you can understand the size of this data, that too every minute or every hour. Then variety of data means you not only have the metering data, you can also have census data. Census data means the population data, name, age, health, etc., height, weight, and all different kinds of data. You can have data coming from the SCADA systems that can be in different formats. You can have data coming from equipments. Okay, you can have data coming from the phasor measurement units or the synchrophasor units. So you can get the data from variety of the sources and in the variety of the format. So some data can be in the Excel format, some data can be in the PDF format, and so on and so forth, right? Then velocity. Velocity means the speed at which you are getting the data. So the velocity of the data in today's world is extremely high. Okay, so the recording frequency varies from once a day to 15 minutes. That means that the automatic meter or the smart meter may give you the reading once a day, or if you want, you can take reading every 15 minutes. Then there are something called as phasor measurement units in power systems, which have a data frequency of 30 to 60 samples per second. So it is not like per minute or per day, it is per second. So in 1 second you have 60 data points. So in 1 minute you will have 3600 data points, and you can calculate how many you will have in 1 hour and 1 day. So you will have terabytes of data coming to you at a rapid speed, right? And then there is something called as edge computing trend. Edge computing is something wherein you try to solve the problem at the place where it has to be solved by using some computational techniques. For example, you have a large substation and there are many equipment at that substation. You want to take their decisions at that point, then you need to have edge computing, right? So these 4 V's have forced the computer scientists and the engineers to handle the data in a different way than they used to do it traditionally. So how we used to handle the data traditionally? We used to store it in say disks or files, in Excel sheets, and maybe in Oracle or some SQL server, etc. But in today's world, that is also not enough. It is not possible to store data on a single system or a single server, whatsoever its size may be. So the concept of big data has come up in the market, and you have systems like Hadoop and different big data handling systems are there, which are taking care of this, right? So I hope you must have understood what is big data and why the big data, and what are these 4 V's of the big data. Now, before taking you to through too many technical terms, which are important for you to understand this, I'll just give you a brief idea about what is the application. So once you see the application, then you will be interested in listening to the further talk. So the application is nothing but the anomaly detection, electricity theft. Electricity theft is a very, very big problem. Okay, and if you see the recent report, you can just Google this out. The electricity theft in India. Just Google it out when after this session, you will find this news item that India is losing rupees 100,000 crore in unbilled electricity. 100,000 crores a year. You see, in a pandemic situation, we are talking about 1 lakh crore package. So it's equivalent to that, and it is only because of the electricity theft. Solution is smart meters. So smart meters is a solution which is suggested. Now, how these smart meters will help you? So if a user is trying to bypass the smart meter or tamper with the electricity meter, or if cyber attacker is hacking into meters, okay, and communication network to alter the kWh readings, of course these things are possible and these things are being done, okay, but how do you detect them? So this can be done by using the big data analytics, machine learning, and some algorithms, right? So how this will traditionally people will go a survey, so someone has the transmission line or something like that, and they will check the transformers and all. Okay, but again, once that traditional inspector comes and goes, will once again start stealing the but you can, because you have lakhs of customers. Those lakhs of customers, few hundreds are those who are doing this theft. Okay, and it is not for the based on strong data. to identify those. Okay, so one block diagram. Sorry, so there was some audio problem for a while. Okay, so consists block diagram. So you have city consumption data. You will do some data pre-processing. You will take out something called as training data and test data. You will apply something called as CNN. Okay, this CNN data, and you will do the performance evaluation. So all these block diagrams will basically lead to from the electricity consumption data to performance evaluation. Okay, performance evaluation is regarding the model or basically theft detection. So based on the condition of last say 60 days, you can exactly know who is stealing that. We'll come back to the same example after we understand some more important points regarding this. Okay, so now let us quickly understand, because we are not having too much of time. So I will try to take you through some of the terminologies which are used in data science, in machine learning specifically, because data alone cannot do anything. Machine learning cannot alone do anything. You have to use data, apply machine learning on data, and come out with the solutions. Right now, what is this machine learning? Machine learning can be classified in various terms. So one is called as supervised learning, something is called as, another is called as unsupervised learning. So what is machine learning? Machine learning is basically if you give a computer a lot of data points and ask the computer which one is which one. So for example, if you give a lot of fruits, or let's say only two kinds of fruits, the bananas and apples, to the computer, and you ask the computer, tell me which whether this is a banana or an apple. So there are two ways of doing this. One way, you train the computer by showing the figures, showing the image of that apple continuously, and tell him that this is apple, then show the banana, this is banana. Show it 100 times, 200 times. Okay, and then ask the computer. The computer will say this is banana. You say no. Then he will say it is apple. You will say yes. This is called as supervised learning. So in supervised learning, what we do, we give the training to the computer based on previous information. That means you have previous information about the correct answers, right? So you give a lot of data. So in electricity terms, if I want to tell you, let us say you give the voltage and current of a machine, and you have three columns. You prepare a table, voltage, current, and whether the machine is faulty or not faulty. So you have such 1,000 data points. That means you have 1,000 rows with voltage, current, and the label. Label is telling whether it is faulty or not. So this is called a supervised learning. By this learning technique, computer will learn and try to differentiate between whether, if this is the voltage, this is the current, whether it will be faulty or not faulty. What is unsupervised learning? In unsupervised learning, what we do is we allow the computer to decide. We give a lot of data to the computer, data points, and we ask the computer to decide that which one is, how many different types are there, okay, or different clusters are there. For example, you see in this cartoon, the computer is trying to decipher. First of all, he is trying to take out the bananas and apples together, and finally he has found out that, okay, these are the bananas, which he has encircled with blue circle, and the purple ones are the apples, right? So this is called as unsupervised learning, where you don't tell the computer that this is X thing, this is Y thing. You simply give the data to the computer and leave it to the computer to work on it and cluster the things or separate the things according to some features, right? Okay, so this is brief about supervised and unsupervised learning. Then the use of machine learning is for two purposes, mostly for two purposes. One is called as regression and another is called as classification. Okay, now what is regression? Let us say you want your system to tell that what will be the temperature value tomorrow. Okay, so the figure is saying what is the temperature going to be tomorrow. If you say it will be 84 degree Fahrenheit, it will be 84 degree Fahrenheit, right? Then this is called as regression. So wherever you give exact value, wherever you give the exact value in numerical terms, Okay, that is nothing but regression. Then second thing is classification. What is classification? Classification is something like, say, yes or no, good or bad, yellow or red. So if you want to classify, means you just say whether it belongs to this thing or that thing. So the classification can be explained by, will it be cold or hot? So either you will say cold or you will say hot. Okay, this is nothing but the classification. Classification can be again binary classification or multi-class classification. Okay, so for example, this diagram is showing here binary classification. So these reds are there and blue circles are there, red crosses. Okay, so only two types of class are there. Let's say we want to classify people into short and tall. So short, tall, only two classes are there. So binary classification. Then multi-class classification, short, medium, tall. You can extend this to any number of classes: medium, short, tall, dwarf, etc. Right? So this is how it works. This is nothing but classification. So I hope you have understood the difference between regression and classification. Regression is giving a numerical answer, and classification is finding out which thing is what. Moving ahead. Okay. Now this is another term which is quite used in the machine learning domain. This is called as a technique called as k-means clustering. Okay, it is very simple to understand. If we'll start from first diagram where iteration 1 is written. You see there are all these black circles, black spots which are there. All black spots are there. Here, all these black spots are there. Right? And now I want to identify or cluster these black spots into 3 different colors. Okay, these 3 is K. K means how many different clusters you want to form out of this data. So I want to form out 3 clusters: green, blue, and red. Okay, so how this works? So first of all, what you do is you select any 3 random points. I have selected one point here, another point here, another point here. Then I will measure the distance of every point. All these black points distance will be measured with the green one. All the black points distance will be measured with the red one, and all these black points distance will be measured with the blue one. Then whichever points are closest to green will be made green. Whichever points are closest to green will be made green. Whichever points are closest to red will be made red, and whichever points are closest to blue will be made blue. Closest means we'll calculate the Euclidean distance. Okay, Euclidean distance. So under root of y2 minus y1 square plus x2 minus x1 square. If you remember the formula, we'll find out the Euclidean distance. Then once again we will shift this arrows. So these crosses. So blue, green, red. Again, this will be shifted to new values after taking the centroid of all these points. So you have these many green points. You once again take the mean of all this. This is the new green point. This is the new mean red. This is the new one. Okay. Now once again calculate the distance of each and every point, whether it is red, green, or blue, from every center. So I will calculate all the points distance from this green, red, blue. I will continue doing this. I'll continue doing this till I have this convergence. If you see the last diagram, now if I shift this red or green or blue crosses, okay, so there is no other cluster that I can find apart from this. So this is nothing but convergence. That means I have identified, my machine learning system has identified that there are 3 parts to this data. One is this, second is this, third is this. Now you may have a natural question, why 3 only? Why not 2? Why not 4? Exactly. You can decide the value of K has to be pre-decided by us, that what should be the value of K. Accordingly, we have to. So it depends on the domain knowledge. So you, as an electrical engineer, you can decide that if this is the map of a power system, okay, this is the location of substations of a power system, how many clusters you want, rural, urban, semi-urban. So you can have 3 clusters. If you want to have urban 1, urban 2, urban 3, you can have 4 clusters. So depends on this, these K values will depend. Okay, so once quickly, you decide the initial centroids. These are called as the centroids. measure the distance of all black points to this point, all black points to this and this. Okay, then find out which are the closest to which one. Once again, change the centroid, do this, keep on doing this until the things converge. I hope you have got some idea about k-means clustering. Now another algorithm which is very popular, it is called as a decision tree. Now decision tree is a very simple thing which can be understood by anyone. Let us say that you want to give a loan to a person. Okay, now you have data of a lot of people with you. You have data of a lot of people with you, and you have their credit history. You know their credit history. Okay, you know their credit history. You know their income, and you know how much loan amount they have applied for. So what decision tree can do is, based on credit history, you can divide the entire data into two parts. So all those people who have a good credit history, you will take it on one side. All the people who have bad credit history, you will take on one side. Then you divide on something called as income. So all people who have a low income, you divide on one side. All people you have high income, you divide on the other side. Okay, here also, all people who have low income one side, high another side. Then finally you divide on loan amount. So which person, if a person needs a small amount or a big amount, small or big, etc. And then you take a decision. So this is something what we do actually in our real life also. So this can also be done by the computer. So this is nothing but the decision tree. Okay, based on the credit history, you decide whether you want to give the loan or not. Okay, so if I go this way, so if the credit history is good and income is low and loan amount is small, you should give the loan. If the credit history is good, income is low, but the loan amount is higher, don't give it, right? If the credit history is good, if income is high, loan amount is small, give, loan amount is big, give. This way, you cross means don't give, right means give. So this is how you have classified the data. So all the people who have whose data is with you, you can decide whether to give loans to them, yes or no, based on this decision tree. Okay, this is a nice simple algorithm to understand for people. Then you have another example here for a heart disease. Okay, so if you have something called as THAL is equal to 3 is a good thing. So if THAL equal to 3, you should, if it is yes, you check what kind of pain type is there for the patient. If it is 1, 2, 3, then there is no heart disease. If it is not 1, 2, 3, then check the fluoroscopy, colored fluoroscopy, is it less than 0.5? If it is yes, then there is no heart disease. If it is no, there is a heart disease. Okay, if THAL is not equal to 3, then if the colored fluoroscopy is less than 0.5, okay, then if exercise angina is 0, and if age is less than 51, no. Okay, so this is something called as a decision tree, and this can be implemented. This is basically an algorithm which can be implemented by machine learning, by some programming language, and we can come out with the decisions. Now coming to the random forest. What is a random forest? You have just now seen decision tree. So if you prepare a decision tree for a database, okay, it is easy for you to take decisions. But if you depend only on a single decision tree, your results may not be correct. So for example, this is a fruit basket which is given to you, and you have to identify whatever fruit. You take out one fruit randomly and decide whether it is an apple or banana or a grape or etc. So if you depend on only one decision tree, and if it says always apple, then you may be in a fix. So your classification may not be correct. Okay, so instead of that, what you do is, instead of one decision tree, use many decision trees and then take the majority voting. For example, in this case, we have used 3 trees. This is 1 tree, 2nd tree, 3rd tree. First 2 trees are saying this is a apple, 3rd tree is saying it is a banana. We'll take the majority voting. Majority is saying it is apple. Final will say that this is finally an apple. This is the concept of the random forest. This concept is also known as ensemble. Ensemble means instead of using a single model, you use multiple models, and out of these multiple models, take the majority. Whatever is the majority saying, you have to accept that. Okay, why this is useful? Because collection of models is always better than individual models, right? So even in a cricket team, you see, instead of having all very good batsmen, we have to decide. We have to have few good batsmen, few good bowlers, good fielders. Okay, so you should have a diverse team and you should have an acceptable team. That is the advantage of random forest. So this random forest will generally work better than the decision trees, right? So this is another algorithm. Then there is an algorithm called as support vector machines, or SVM in short. Now SVM is something which is totally mathematical, a concept called as hyperplane. Hyperplane is nothing but it is a boundary which separates the data set into classes. For example, in this diagram, if you see, there are these red points and blue points, right? So if I want to draw a line between this red and blue, these blue crosses and red circles, then what I need to do is I need to have, because this is a two-dimensional thing, I will have a simple line which can define it. So this is nothing but a hyperplane, but it is not necessary that it will be a line. Okay, it can be a plane or even an n-dimensional. Right. So if you see the second diagram here, it is a plane because we need to. It's a three-dimensional thing. So in a three-dimensional thing, it will be a plane. And the support vector machine is something which gives us the best difference between the classes. So basically, this is a classifier. Classifier means you decide whether it belongs to class A or class B. For example, if you have an email, whether email is a spam mail or it is a normal mail. Okay. So these pluses are spams and these reds are normal mails. Okay. Or you can have a three-dimensional thing wherein you have three variables x, y, and z, and then you have to decide the value of y based on that. In that case, the decision classifier will be a plane like this. Okay. And one which is having the maximum distance is called as the SVM. Okay. Now, you must be wondering all these names and which I am taking so quickly. This is just to give you an initiation into this, right? As far as programming is concerned, all these models and etc. are already written in libraries of Python and R programming. So all you have to do is to simply import those libraries and write 2 to 3 lines of command. It will run your decision tree. It will run your support vector machine. It will run your random forest, everything. You need not write a single line of code for doing all this. All you need to do is to understand the algorithms. Okay. Then finally, this is the deep learning or neural networks. Neural networks basically is the base on which deep learning is built up. This is something which is very popular in today's world. This is the in thing. Okay, so what is a neural network? I think some of you might have come across this using your electives also. Okay, but quickly I'll tell you. So it is nothing but it is based on something called as a perceptron. So perceptron means what? You have number of inputs like x1, x2, etc. up to xn. You multiply these inputs with something called as weights. So w1, w2, and add them. So what will be the addition? w1 x1 plus w2 x2 up to wn xn. Now whatever addition you have got, you apply an activation function to that and then you give the output. So I can decide if my addition is less than 0.5, my output will be 0. If my addition is greater than 0.5, my output will be 1. This is nothing but a simple perceptron. Okay, so it depends on the inputs, the weights, and the activation function. So it is inspired by the human brain, wherein the human brain can take a decision. The neuron of the human brain can either amplify a signal or inhibit a signal. Inhibit means stop a signal based on some inputs. Okay, so for example, if I have a value of all these less than 0.5, my brain will decide no, this is not a, let's say I want to identify whether an animal is cat or not. If my input is less than 0.5, I'll say no, it is not a cat. If it is greater than that, I'll say okay, it is a cat. So this way the perceptron works. This way a single neuron works. Now if I take so many neurons, like so many inputs, this was a single neuron. If I go on adding the neurons, so this is like, just a minute. Yeah. So this is a single neuron. So this single neuron is here, here, and here. I can have n number of neurons here. This one, these 3 points, these are inputs. 3 neurons I have taken. This is called as the input layer. Then these 3 neurons, you can have n number of neurons here. This will be, this is called as a hidden layer. You can have so many hidden layers. So more the number of hidden layers, your network is called as a deeper network. Okay. And finally, you will have an output layer, and output layer will take the decision. So neural networks are also called as universal approximators. So practically, theoretically, you can do anything with the neural network. Any kind of function can be formulated using the neural network. Of course, the amount of processing power required for neural networks is much higher as compared to the normal network. All right, moving ahead. Now, if you talk about a typical supervised machine learning pipeline, that means if you have a problem and you want to solve that problem using machine learning, this is what you will have to do all the time. First of all, data understanding and cleaning. Okay, so data understanding and cleaning means you may not be having the data in the correct format. Okay, so you may be having a raw data. So you have to understand the data, what data is useful for you, remove the remaining data, clean it, and bring it to your requirement. Cleaning means suppose there are missing values in the data, then you have to impute those missing values. That means you have to either put 0 there or put some maximum value, minimum value, average value, etc. Right? Once you have done this step, then you go to exploratory data analysis. In exploratory data analysis, you visualize the data and try to bring out some initial understanding of the data. So you can draw some bar charts, you can draw some box plots, and you can draw some scatter plots and try to understand what kind of data is useful, what kind of data is not useful, what is the initial guess you are getting about this data. Then the step is called as the train test split. Train test split means what? You cannot use the entire data for training the system. You have to divide the data. So let's say you have 100 rows of the data. Out of these 100 rows, 70 rows you can use for training and 30 rows you can keep aside for testing. So you will train the data on different data set and you will test it on a different data set. Then only whether your model is good or not will be known, right? So train test split is like that. So once you divide the data into train and test set, then you prepare your model. You can, what is model now? The model can be any one of the previous models that we have discussed. So it can be a linear regression, it can be a logistic regression, it can be a random forest, it can be a decision tree, support vector machine, k nearest neighbors, or the k means algorithm, anything, any model you have to build, and then you have to do the hyperparameter tuning. Hyperparameter tuning means we have seen the k means algorithm where we have selected k as 3. Similarly, every algorithm has different parameters which have to be tuned, right? So fine tuning the parameters that will be required, and after that you will do the model evaluation. Model evaluation means whether your model is performing properly or not. Okay, so these are the 5 steps which are always required whenever you prepare a supervised machine pipeline. Now let us have a better look at model evaluation. What exactly is this model evaluation or the performance evaluation? Now let's say you have developed a classifier. Classifier means you have developed something which tells let me start with the example. Let's take a cancer detection example. So you have a data set of say 1 lakh people, and out of these 1 lakh people data set, only 1,000 people are having actual cancer. This data set is given to you of 1 lakh rows in which only 1,000 people have cancer, 99,000 people do not have cancer, right? Now out of these 1 lakh rows, you have taken 70,000 rows for training the data, 30,000 rows for testing the data, and now you calculate the accuracy of the model. So now your model is, whenever you give data to your model will say whether a person has cancer or no cancer. Okay, whether a person has cancer or no cancer. So you ask this question to yourself: if out of 1 lakh people, 99,000 people do not have cancer, okay, then even if your model always says that there is no cancer, what will be the accuracy of the model? It will be 99%. It will be 99% because very few people have cancer. Okay, so this kind of problems arise when you actually evaluate a model. So accuracy is not always the correct answer or correct way of judging your model. Okay, similarly you can take another example. Suppose you have a data set wherein there are credit card transactions are given to you. Okay, and let's say there are 1,000 credit card transactions, out of which only 2 transactions are fraud and 998 are correct transactions. Now if you prepare model on this data set and if you always say there is no fraud, that means your model is 99% accurate. Okay, so you have to remember this thing, that accuracy is not always the best metric. then what should be done? If accuracy is not the thing, then what should be done? Then you should look at this matrix, which is also called as a confusion matrix. This particular matrix is called as a confusion matrix, where positive, negative is written. So let us say if your actual answer is positive and your model is predicting positive, this thing is called as true positive. This thing is called as true positive. Suppose your actual answer is positive and the model is saying negative. That means if your actual answer is cancer and your model is saying no cancer, so this is an error. This is called as a false negative. False negative. If your actual answer is negative, that means the person has cancer, person doesn't has cancer, but your model is saying the person has cancer. This is called as false positive. And then this is if there is no cancer and your model is also correct, then this is called as true negative. So you have true positive, true negative. True positive and true negative are good things. False positive, false negative are not good things. So whenever you have a false positive or false negative, your model has failed. If you have true positive, true negative, model has correctly predicted. So based on these four values, true positive, true negative, false negative, you calculate something called as sensitivity, specificity, precision. Okay, and these values are calculated, and depending on the application, you have to decide what do you want more. You want higher sensitivity or higher specificity, or you want higher accuracy. So accuracy is okay when there are equal positive and negative values. So let's say that you want to judge out of 5,000 people, how many are male and how many are female. If you want to judge that, okay, then in that case, you will have the accuracy as the good model. Otherwise, sensitivity and specificity will be a better model. And then we have this particular curve on your right hand side, which is also called as the ROC. Sorry, ROC. ROC is nothing but receiver operating characteristics. This is derived from electrical engineering only. So it is a curve between the true positive rate and false positive rate. So false positive rate is on x-axis, true positive rate is on y-axis, and the area under this curve has to be maximized. So if you have a higher area under this curve, your model is good. So my suggestion is always go for area under curve as the metric, because this will be most of the in practical applications, AUC has to be maximized. Right? So we have gone through all the processes, that what is machine learning, what is supervised, what is unsupervised, okay, what is model, how to prepare a model, etc. Now let us revisit the theft detection problem. So in the theft detection problem, we have seen that I have mentioned this link here. If you go to this link, you can download this paper, and this is giving a good example of electricity theft detection. So if you have a smart meter data with you, first of all, you will do data understanding and data analysis. So you will find out who are the non-residential users and residential users. You will do the analysis on working days and holidays, seasonal change, etc. Then you will do the data pre-processing. In data pre-processing, you will do the data cleaning. Data cleaning means missing value imputation. Missing value imputation means, suppose there is a missing value of the meter reading. So this cannot be accepted when you prepare a algorithm. So you have to replace that missing value either by 0 or by minimum or maximum or mean, median, anything. For example, our MSCB bill has come. So MSCB bill, they have taken the average value and given us the bill. So they have basically done the missing value imputation by this average value. After that, you do something called as cross validation. Cross validation algorithm is for generation of train and test data set. Okay, so if you observe the top line here, this is the original data set. Then we have done the data analysis and pre-process. Then we have train and test data sets. So in train and test data set, we divide by using this cross validation algorithm. Now, what is cross validation algorithm is a bit advanced for me to explain right now, but it is simply if you have less number of positive and negative, to balance that we have to do this. Then there is a SMOT algorithm. SMOT algorithm will give you the unbalanced data set to balanced data set. So once again, most of the times the frauds, the cancer, these kind of data sets are unbalanced. Unbalanced means there are very few cancer patients, there are very few fraudulent people. Okay, so we have to balance such a data set. That means we have to equalize the number of readings. For that, this SMOT algorithm is used. And once this is done, you will use the neural network. You will use the neural network or the CNN and random forest model, okay, to do this. So CNN, right now we have seen this random forest, right? So either you can use the deep learning method as CNN, or you can use any other, and then you can use the random forest classifier. Once this is done, then you will finally do the model evaluation, calculate the confusion matrix. I have explained you what is a confusion matrix, and you will plot the ROC curves. ROC curves means you will find out the area under the curve. If it is good, then higher the area under the curve, it is good for you, right? So I will recommend that you go through these processes by going through this paper. I would request you to go through this paper. While going through this paper, you can refer to my presentation as well and try to understand this. Okay, so this is the broad flowchart of the theft detection. Then there are various other applications of machine learning in power system or data science in power system. Predictive maintenance. So the lack of data and knowledge about the transformers prevent the utilities from performing predictive maintenance until the transformer actually fails, and this results in interruption in service to one or more customers, right? So we can solve this problem by assigning and maintaining a health index score and predict remaining life for the transformer. So we have if you see the figure, we have a historic data set. Okay, so this data set we can take from multiple data sources. Okay, sometimes if the data is not available, what we can do is we can actually do the simulation as we do in MATLAB. We can do the simulation in MATLAB and prepare a artificial data. That can also be done. Recently I have attended a L&T Technology Services webinar. These people are doing the same thing, because it is not possible that always the data will be available. So you can prepare a simulation and prepare some artificial data, then prepare a machine learning model. Okay, either you can use decision tree or random forest or anything, and then prepare the output. So what is this output saying? Transformer A has age of 50. It is having a peak loading of 140%. It has a probability of failure of 0.78. 0.78 means 78% probability that it will fail. Okay, so you can tell this in advance about the equipment, whether it is going to fail or not. Now, what are the variables that you can use for this data set? Peak loading, average loading, what kind of manufacturer is there, what is the model, which region it belongs to, what is the humidity, what is the percentage time it was overloaded. If you have this data, you can use the algorithm and predict whether that transformer will remain or not. Then another method, the similar kind of use case is condition monitoring. So condition monitoring is again, I have just spoken about the transformer. You can apply it to all different kind of equipment. And nowadays, companies like IBM have come up with a tool, with a very good tool called as IBM Watson. This Watson is another kind of a machine learning engine. It's a kind of a important intelligent computer which can tell you about all these things. Okay, so you have a plant, you have plant information, loading history, transformer monitoring, power generation, generator monitoring. You can do cable monitoring. Okay, so all these things can be done. So you have an old plant information. You can have loading history and all these monitoring. Apart from this, you can also do theoretical modeling and experiments. And from this, you can do all your machine learning, and then the Watson can tell you the remaining life, and it can also recommend the action. So this will make these devices talk with each other as if the devices are talking with each other. For example, this cable is saying I am healthy. Okay, this is saying I can service for another 10 years. This is saying I will break down in 3 months. This is saying I should be replaced at once, right? So not only machine learning and data science, but also the IoT is playing a bigger role, because if you have so many sensors being installed, if you can leverage the data and use it, you can do predictive maintenance, condition monitoring. Okay, and there are many real-time analytics that you can do. This is not restricted to what electricity theft detection or condition monitoring I have told. You can do phase angle and grid stress monitoring, voltage stability monitoring, oscillation stability analysis, oscillation detection, frequency stability monitoring, for example, angular stability. Okay, whether the generator will trip, when will the load trip, you can detect the islanding, you can create intelligent alarms. Okay, so many things are possible. It is, in fact, I cannot list down what kind of applications will be there, but it's up to you to explore. Okay, and it is not only data science that is important, it is the domain knowledge. So if you know as an electrical engineering engineer what is voltage stability, then only you can write a good machine learning program for voltage stability monitoring. Right now, what are the tools where you can start with or use these tools? So electrical engineering or power systems you already know. So I will suggest that you go to you try to have a hand on this Python or R or MATLAB. Any of these programming languages can be used for this purpose. If you are good with MATLAB, it's okay. Python, I think I found it the simplest one to understand and implement. R and MATLAB are similar. Database, MySQL, and for big data, there is a tool called as Hive and Spark, which can be used. For visualization of data, you can use something called as a Tableau. Its free version is available. You can download and experiment this, and there are many more. You can use Excel also. Then for machine learning programs, running that program, there is a free source by Google that is called as Google Colaboratory. Okay, so you can go to Google and search for Google Colaboratory. You can write your Python programs there and run there. You need not download anything and install. Directly on cloud you can do this. And there is a website called as Kaggle. This is a very good website which will give you lots and lots of data source, then programs also written by people, outputs, articles, everything about data science and machine learning. So I will recommend to go through these tools and use cases. All right. And so there is too much to tell, but I think this is how much I can pack in this much. Thank you so much for this. And since we are running almost ran out of time, you can email your questions to me personally on my email address, which is flashed here, or you can email to the email address eedbitw@gmail.com. Okay. Also, the recording of all these sessions will be shared to you. And I urge you to join tomorrow's interesting sessions. Both these sessions are from industry people by Mr. Satish Tikande, who is a senior general manager at Abhijit Projects Limited, and Mr. Anand Khanjode, who is head of learning and development at QAPCO Qatar. Okay, so the first session will begin 10:30 a.m. Okay, please note that to receive the certificate, you have to fill the feedback form, and anyway, the feedback will help us prepare better next time. And thank you so much for your listening. If you have questions, please share with. Don't hesitate to share on this, and please reach out to me anytime on this topic. Thank you very much.